All right. Hey, my friends, and welcome to today's episode where we're going to talk about the Grinch that stole Christmas and what we can learn about our own healing, as well as healing just in general when it comes to our own mental and emotional well being. So, I'm really excited for this episode. Before we dive in, I have some few things that I want to share. So, if you are looking for help on your journey to recovery from OCD and anxiety, please head over to restoredminds.com or check out the links in the notes. I have some great resources available for you. Everything from a free weekly coaching that I put out to our newsletter, as well as, again, our book and the TBC program, which you can apply for if you want to work with me and my team directly. And then also, if you benefit from the show, please help us out by liking and subscribing and sharing. And then finally, I'm going to be doing a free live workshop next week at the time of this recording. So it's going to be on Wednesday, I believe the 11th of December. Again, very excited for it. You will have to register to get access. And so we'll have a link down in the notes. And then also please make sure that you're subscribed to the newsletter, because that's where you'll really be able to get the details. And again, it's free. But again, I'm going to be doing it on healing emotional wounds. And so should be very powerful, and part of this series too is gonna be diving into that. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into the Grinch. Now the Grinch. So I was watching the Grinch the other day with my daughter and my wife, and we were just kind of sitting there getting in the holiday spirit and watching the movie. It's a great movie, and specifically I'm referencing the newer version of it, but throughout the movie, you start to learn the story of the Grinch, and everyone's perception of the Grinch is that he's just this mean, kind of angry dude that lives away from the town. He hates Christmas. He hates anything to do with Christmas, and he's just grouchy and grumpy, and that's just who he is, right? And we assume that he's just this kind of bad guy. And it's so easy for us to just throw these labels on people in our lives that are like this, right? People that are kind of just salty, rough around the edges, right? Just tough to interact with, kind of negative. And, instead of really beginning to understand maybe why they are like that, and the healing story of the Grinch was just phenomenal. And so to really watch the whole thing play out. And I wanted to talk about it today because I think that it's so easy to just dismiss and kind of shun people like that. But I think we all have someone like that we know, right? We all have the Grinch that we encounter every time, whether it's just the person at the store who's angry and yelling, or, whatever it is someone who's kind of against the spirit of the season, if you will, and for me, I mean, Christmas time, one of my favorite times a year, right? To enjoy and really embrace, because there's just a certain spirit and energy that people really allow themselves to kind of rise into in this time. So the Grinch, come to find out, there was an amazing scene in the movie that I'm talking about where he gets really triggered, and they light up the Christmas tree, and you see all this emotion come up, and even the narration is talking about how, he felt all these feelings that he felt kind of just in a long time ago in his life, and he starts having this really, really heavy emotional experience. And he then goes back to this younger time of his life where he was in an orphanage and he didn't have family, and he saw Christmas, all these people celebrating Christmas, and he was just alone. And the pain of being alone, the pain of that experience was something that was too much for the Grinch at that point. It was too much for him to be able to handle, especially as a young kid. And what happens when something's too much, we oftentimes will bury it, we'll avoid it. And then what we'll do is we develop a persona or a personality that protects us from that. And it's so interesting watching. So persona, the etymology of the word persona, just means a mask. It's just a mask, right? So anyone that has these big person, like anyone's personality, right, at the end of the day, for the most part, is a mask of some sort that they are putting out. So especially if someone's a certain persona, it's a mask. It's not really who they are. And this is what most of us do. We look at someone's mask, or we look at their persona, and we assume that that's just who they are, and we treat them as such. And really, when you really want to get to understand someone, you got to look beyond the mask. You got to look beyond the persona that they project out into the world. And as the Grinch goes and steals Christmas, and then he sees that the next morning everyone's just singing Christmas, and that he couldn't actually take it from them, and that he actually learned that it was love that was really needed, because it was talked about his heart being two sizes too small. And he starts really getting filled with love, and he starts to allow himself to feel that and to feel connection. And at the end of the movie, he has this just great closing line when he's at dinner, and they invite him to dinner anyway after he stole everything, right? And he expresses, he's like, it was never really Christmas that I hated. It was the feeling of being alone. And Christmas was such a reminder from that one event in his life. And it was so profound, because the healing happened where you realize the trigger of Christmas was never the problem, right? It was never the thing that actually was bothering him. It was the corresponding emotion that was from such an early stage in his life, where he felt so alone and so hurt from being alone that he had to do everything he could not to feel that. And there was this association with Christmas, but it wasn't Christmas that caused it, right? And even his unawareness, right? The reason he protected himself from Christmas wasn't because Christmas did anything. It was the feeling that was corresponding with it that he didn't know how to handle. And it was actually through being able to feel love and to move himself into a higher energy state that he had enough capacity then to confront that and feel through that and release that and let that go. And then ultimately his entire perception of Christmas changed. It was now a joyous event. It was something to be celebrated, and something that he had the connection that he always wanted. And when you watch the healing happen, you realize that the persona that he put out, that everyone perceived, was not really who he was. It wasn't a bad person, right? And ultimately he didn't have the skill set or tools or understanding on how to do this. So he was just doing the best that he really could. And the best that he could do was just to avoid and to be grouchy and grumpy about Christmas, because that was the only thing he could do to protect himself. In fact, he tried to protect himself so much that he went and isolated himself in a mountain just to be away. And I think there's so much correspondence to what we can take, not only in people in our lives, but also with our own story. See, a lot of us don't realize that we might be the Grinch in someone else's story, right? And that's something that most of us don't want to confront or look at. But if we again begin to understand other people, and we start to look beyond the mask and the personas that they put out, and then judge them based off that and assume that that's who they are, but we look beyond that and we go, okay, like, what's potentially driving that person? And this is the interesting thing, is if we choose to extend love there, right? To extend love, regardless on whether or not we believe they deserve it, but the extension of love. And this is what happened with the Grinch, right? All the people in the Whoville loved him regardless of the fact that he stole their Christmas, because they intuitively knew that that's what he needed. And we can do this with people in our lives. Because it's very challenging to be grumpy and grouchy to someone that's extending love to you. It's like almost impossible. The energy fields are so different that when you just extend love to someone, they almost can't stay in these low states. See, what happens is we judge their low state and their mask and their persona, and then we withhold love from them. And then that puts us in a lower energy state, and then that's where the real clashes happen. But when you decide to extend love, that's what allows for someone else to heal and ultimately move beyond a lot of their own wounds that they're operating from. And at the same time, when we extend love to ourselves, that's what allows us to heal. And so as we move into this season, I wanted to just create this episode, and this is really what the workshop that I'm going to run next week is going to be about, is about how to confront a lot of our wounds. And so make sure to grab a spot and register for it. It's going to be free, but I think it's going to be really powerful when it comes to releasing and overcoming some of the wounds that we hang on to. But the big thing that I thought we could learn from the movie, or at least I took from it, is noticing the people that I perceive as the Grinch, if you will, right? Metaphorically, of course. And noticing really that all I actually need to do is extend love. That's really all I need to do. I don't need to talk to them and try to convince them to see the world, because they see the world the way they see it because they're running from the pain. Right. And a lot of times what they're seeing is not really what's going on. It's merely just a reflection of their state. And instead of trying to change their perspective, if I can change their state by sending them that energy of love, by loving them unconditionally, that is way more likely to help them get to an energy state where they can actually experience healing and start to perceive things in a much higher way. And at the same time, also being willing to look at myself, and you can look at yourself and ask, hey, is it possible that I'm the Grinch in someone else's story? That person at work, or that family member that I don't like, or, whatever it is. And if I am, instead of me assuming everything I'm seeing outside of me is the problem, maybe let's go in here and say, hey, is there stuff that I can let go of, that I'm holding on to, that I've put up these personas to protect me from? And how would that not only serve me, but then everyone else in my environment, in my life? And I just think that, there's a lot to take away from that. And it can be very powerful, very transformative. And something that if you are really willing to look at this, both from an outside perspective and an inside perspective, it can change the way you move into the whole holiday season, the way the energy you experience throughout the holiday season, and just your entire perspective. So with that, I hope this was helpful. And if you did find this helpful, I really encourage you to register for the event next week. Again, we'll have links down in the notes, or you can head over to restoredminds.com, and we'll have something up there as well. And make sure you get registered for our starter package and our weekly letter that we send out as well. So with that, wishing you all a great holiday season, a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Hey there. So if you enjoyed that video, we've linked up a few more videos that we think you'd find helpful as well. And if you have found this helpful, we'd really appreciate your support by liking and subscribing. And if you're looking for help and guidance, please check out restoredminds.com, as we have several options for you to get started. See you guys soon.